How's that for a slice of fried gold?
You think this is a fucking costume? This is a way of life.
I'll be back.
Just a flesh wound. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Take your sticking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Well, hello! Don't tell Gary I used his sign-on. Welcome to Cinema Shock. I am one of your regular co-hosts, Mr. Todd A. Davis, and this is the podcast that celebrates the stories behind your favorite cult and genre films. And the man behind some of those fantastic stories is the subject of this bonus interview episode, Mr. Spencer Garrett. Now, I won't get into too much about his career here at the top, but needless to say, Spencer is a phenomenal and legendary character actor with over 30 years in the business. He is also very kind and gracious for carving out some time with me back over the holidays to discuss his career for my other podcast, Computer Resume Podcast, because he is Star Trek alumni. But we'll get into that in the interview. Also, Spencer is portraying legendary sportscaster and play-by-play announcer for the Los Angeles Lakers, Mr. Chick Hearn, in the HBO series Winning Time: The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty, alongside folks like John C. Reilly, not Will Ferrell, Quincy Isaiah as Magic Johnson, and Devon Nixon from Terminator 2, Gabby Hoffman from Field of Dreams, Rob Morgan from all 6 of Netflix's Marvel series, and we got some heavy hitters like Academy Award winners Adrian Brody and Sally Field, Golden Globe, SAG, and Emmy winner Michael Chiklis, Jason Segel and his gigantic penis. From Marvel's Runaways, Ghost Rider, Dark Knight Rises, and Joker, Brett Cullen, Pulitzer Prize winner Tracy Letts, Gillian Jacobs from Community, Wood Harris from Remember the Titans, Rory Cochrane from Empire Records and A Scanner Darkly, Edwin Hodge from the Purge franchise, Rodney Barnes from Everybody Hates Chris, Marvel's Runaways, and American Gods, and Mike Epps as legendary comedian Richard Pryor. Sounds like it's going to be a real slam dunk. Sorry about that. Anyways, be sure to check out the first 2 episodes of Winning Time: The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty, which are available now on HBO. Last thing before we get started is you may notice that the editing on this episode is a little different than what you may be used to with Cinema Shock, and that's because I edited this episode instead of Justin and Gary. But we're all positive you'll enjoy my interview with Mr. Spencer Garrett. So without further ado, he's done it all, folks. Coach, pastor, patrolman, officer, detective, sheriff, agent, doctor, ensign, lieutenant, first lieutenant, captain, commander, senator, president, Sith Lord. Oh yeah, and he was on the best 2-parter Voyager telefilm and arguably the best episode of Next Gen, wearing suits like he invented suits. It's Spencer Garrett! Yay! Spencer Garrett!
Yay!
How are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. It's good to see you. Happy holidays, man.
Same to you. Same to you. Thank you so much for carving some time out of your very, very busy schedule for this.
Absolutely my pleasure. I'm happy to be here with you.
Well, let's jump right in. I wanted to ask you, here we are a few days before Christmas.
Yeah.
You're a big movie guy. This is a sort of a 2-part question. What is your favorite holiday movie and why is it The Muppets Christmas Carol?
I love The Muppets Christmas Carol for a lot of reasons. I love the Muppets. I love that the Muppets go back to like the 1950s.
Yes.
I just went down a rabbit hole the other night, a YouTube rabbit hole, looking at Jim Henson's commercials that he did in the late 50s and early 60s. And I also went back to rewatch SNL from its very first episode. And I completely forgotten that the Muppets had their own segment on the early days of SNL.
They sure did.
So yeah, I love the Muppets, and one of my neighbors in my apartment in New York City was one of the writers for Jim Henson and worked on Sesame Street for many, many years.
Oh, wow.
So I got to visit the set when I was a little kid, and that was really a thrill.
Oh my God.
I got to say, I know it sounds a little trite, but It's a Wonderful Life still gets me in the sweet spot every year. I never miss it. I just love that film, and I find something new in it every year. I never fail to cry at the end, maybe a couple of times in between. It's probably Jimmy Stewart's greatest performance, I think.
Yeah.
Huge Jimmy Stewart fan, but I love Frank Capra films, and I think we kind of need them now more than ever. They're very kind of feel-good Americana. But It's a Wonderful Life is really just an extraordinary, timeless film, and it's a very hopeful film. And I love it. That's my favorite Christmas movie. Nice. Probably a close second would be Die Hard.
Yeah, the folks that want to argue against Die Hard as a Christmas movie clearly aren't looking at the plight of John McClane.
I think so.
He's literally traveled to make amends with his family.
That's absolutely true. I saw a clip though, I think yesterday, with Bruce Willis saying it's not a Christmas movie. It's a Bruce Willis movie.
Oh, come on, Bruce.
Bruce. Yeah, he's a tough cookie, but it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But It's a Wonderful Life is definitely up there. And Christmas Story, I also love.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think one of the stations always has that 24-hour of Christmas Story. I always love that. I'm a big Christmas Carol, so I love all the different versions.
The original? You mean the Alistair Sim original from the 30s?
Well, I really enjoyed. I basically started at the newer ones and have been working my way back. I've gotten as far as George C. Scott.
Oh,
and who was before George C. Scott? I forget, but I love every version of it.
Are you a fan of the musical of Scrooge with Albert Finney?
I don't know that I've ever seen the musical.
Oh, come on, Todd.
No. Is it? Please tell me it's available out there somewhere.
Oh yeah, it's got to be. It's
with Albert Finney. You said
Albert Finney. I mean,
okay.
Albert Finney from Tom Jones and Under the Volcano, and nice. The great English actor Albert Finney. It's a musical of Scrooge, and it's fantastic.
Nice. That's so awesome. I love that. And again, I imagine for a lot of the same reasons that you love It's a Wonderful Life, story of redemption, of hey, we can change, you can do things and make the world, be the change that you want to see in the world. That's it's full. That's almost in every Christmas movie.
Well, eventually you will make your way back. If you're going backwards in time, I think the original version of A Christmas Carol stars Alistair Sim as Scrooge. And it's an extraordinary cast. It made in the 1930s. I think it's one of the Ealing films from the British studio, the Ealing, and it's a great film. So that'll take you all the way back. There have been many different versions. Obviously, the Bill Murray Scrooged, which is kind of a big, crazy, flawed comedy.
Right.
I love that too. But I do love the original, and I remember seeing the musical of Scrooge when I was a little kid. And just loving that.
That's awesome. Yeah, Patrick Stewart, coming back to Star Trek.
Yes,
Patrick Stewart's got a version out there, and of course he did it on stage for years and years and years. But let's get right into it. You so born and raised in LA, but you went to school at Duke University. Duke, which is it's only an hour or so up the road from my home in South Carolina. Why? Mm-hmm. Why Duke? What took you from LA to Duke University?
I went to a tiny little performing arts high school in Maine, in Bath, Maine, called Hyde School. 150 students, very, very performing arts oriented.
Nice.
Small school, 150 kids, graduating class of I think 45. As far afield and as far away from LA as you could possibly get. And that's exactly what I wanted when I was 14, 15 years old. I wanted to get out of LA. I grew up with a kind of a show business family. My mom was sort of an itinerant character actress. She was for many years president of the Screen Actors Guild, first woman president of the Screen Actors Guild. Mm-hmm. I spent a lot of time on the road with her, backstages in theaters growing up as a kid. And I I really wanted to get out of LA. I wanted to get as far away from show business as I could, as far away from Hollywood as I could. My dad was a talent agent, and I had an opportunity to go to this weird little school in Bath, Maine, that was a school for character growth and very, very personalized attention, maybe 7-10 kids per class. Really, really wonderful school. And it had a huge performing arts curriculum. And I didn't really know that I would eventually grow up to become an actor, but I still had that Jones. I still had that feeling in my bones that, I grew up with grandparents who were actors. I grew up with a mom who was an actor. My aunt was an actor. So when I got to Hyde, of course, I jumped headfirst into the performing arts program there. And I love that we had there was a show that we did called America's Spirit, that we toured the Eastern Seaboard. We played the Kennedy Center. We played Circle in the Square on Broadway. Yeah. And that's really kind of where I got my feet wet in doing theater and musical theater. And my best friend and roommate at Hyde was going to Duke. I didn't really know much about it, but I figured, if he gets in, I'll apply, and I'll go with him too. And we'll be the theater guys when we get down there. That's and awesome. What I loved about Duke was, I think at the time in 1981, it was kind of 7,000-8,000 kids, and it was a smaller school, and it had a similar vibe to Hyde in that the classes were small. It was very individualized attention, and they had a great theater department. They had a great musical theater department. And so when I got to Duke, I kind of jumped in and started doing the musicals and the plays. And that was really the only reason why I went there, other than the fact that I loved the way the Duke Gardens looked on the brochure.
It's beautiful campus.
It's a beautiful campus. It looked like what your ideal of what a college looks like, with the brick, with the Gothic buildings and the beautiful Duke Gardens. And I was lucky enough to get in, and I got down there, and I was an absolute fish out of water, because I had gone from a tiny little school in Maine where we didn't have grades. It was very kind of very artsy fartsy, touchy feely, crunchy granola, not to put too fine a point on it. And to go from a school like that to a school like Duke, where you had to go to classes and you had to pass your classes, and they did have grades. It was much more regimented, and so I got down to Duke, and I was all of a sudden, this is really what it's like. Yeah. And so that was the reason I went down there originally, to go down, because my best buddy was going to school there, and they had a great theater department, and I wanted to see if I was any good at acting. Yeah. So I jumped into the theater department.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so while you were there, I mean, Duke, anybody can pull up, some of the more notable Duke graduates: Jared Harris, Ken Jeong.
Jared Harris is one of my dearest friends. I did a production of Equus with Jared. Nice. And I remember his father came to Duke to watch the production, and I was so intimidated, because I grew up, having grown up in the business. I knew who Richard Harris was. Great film star, English film star in the 60s and 70s. And so I remember when he came that night, I remember very much wanting to impress him. Wow. And he couldn't have been sweeter. I mean, it was really extraordinary to have Richard Harris in the audience, watching his son, watching me. I played a horse. I mean, I didn't have one of the lead roles. I played one of the horses that gets blinded by Alan Strang, by the kid. Wow. But Jared played the father of the boy, and wonderful actor even back then. And I noticed in the notes that you sent me that my friend Retta was in Duke.
Yeah.
I did not even,
It for folks who are not I mean, it's kind of a deep cut, but like producer, co-supervising producer, teleplays, writer, did stories for Deep Space Nine, Next Gen, had a hand in the Star Trek experience. Actually,
wait, Retta?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Retta, the comedian?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
No, I mean, unless the internet's lying to me, which
I mean, Renee Echevarria, my classmate from Duke, I knew. I mean, he was very involved in the Star Trek world, but we're talking about Retta from Good Girls and.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh my
I was
gosh,
like, where
I'm
are
so
you?
sorry. I'm
Yeah,
so
no,
sorry. Renee, yeah, Renee was the from Star.
Renee
Oh, geez.
Echevarria was a story editor.
Let me take a
Greta.
second and wipe this egg off my face. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. We
But
can cut this.
yes, Retta, yes.
No, Renee Echevarria was a classmate of mine and Jared's. Retta,
Retta,
who was
yes.
on the show Good Girls, and she was on Community, and wonderful comedian. She graduated in '92. I didn't even realize she went to Duke. We were part of the same theater company for years here.
Yeah.
Before she hit it big, but I didn't realize she went to Duke.
I remember seeing a short set of hers on Comedy Central and just being
brilliant. She's brilliant.
So funny. And then
I've
when
also forgotten that Ken Jeong went to Duke as well.
Yeah. And when Retta popped up in there on NBC, I was just like, oh, it's her from The Thing.
You're telling me Alex, like Retta was a story editor on Star Trek?
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. All right.
And after you gave me that compliment of having my together.
Figured it out.
Jeez.
There we go.
But yeah, so then after Duke, you went to Fordham. Am I pronouncing that right? Correctly?
I did. I went to Fordham. I left Duke actually after my junior year. I went to Washington, D.C. I got an internship working for National Public Radio.
Oh, wow.
Just a random internship working in the National Affairs Department. So I went from like being this theater kid at Duke, smoking clove cigarettes and running around in Birkenstocks and playing hacky sack and listening to the Dead. And all of a sudden I'm living in DC wearing a suit, carrying a briefcase.
Oh, that's funny.
Reporting on telecommunications hearings on Capitol Hill. So I did that for 3 years. And while I was in DC, I started auditioning for theater in Washington at the Arena Stage, at the Folger Shakespeare Company, started doing local theater in DC. And that's kind of how I got professionally started. And that's kind of what was the sort of the catalyst and kind of what lit the fire under my ass to finally like, okay, I'm doing this 9-to-5 job on Capitol Hill, working for a great organization, NPR, that I loved, but I knew I wasn't going to do it for the rest of my life. I knew deep down inside at some point, I'm going to either be a local DC theater actor or I'm going to move to New York, continue my studies and finish my degree and start studying with a wonderful acting teacher in earnest. And that's what I did. I left DC after about 2.5 to 3 years, moved to New York. I finished my degree at Fordham, graduating in 1987. Denzel Washington was notably our keynote speaker at my graduation. He graduated, I think, in 87. I graduated 87. Denzel was the keynote speaker. I think Denzel graduated in, I want to say 82 or something like that.
Okay.
But I started doing theater at Fordham, started really taking the classes seriously. And that's when I got into Sanford Meisner's professional class at the Neighborhood Playhouse. And I studied with Sandy Meisner ultimately for about 7 years.
Wow.
And that's when I kind of threw my lot in. I announced to my parents, I said, I'm doing this. I'm joining the family business. I'm going to be an actor. I remember there was just dead silence on the other end of the phone when I told my father, who was a talent agent for 60 years, an agent who was really not particularly fond of actors, oddly enough. And so when I told him I was going to be an actor, there was just a long pause and he went, oh, okay, great. And I remember my mom told my dad, they were separated long before that, but my mom called my dad and said, Spencer just called me and said he wants to be an actor. And my father said, well, what did you expect, an astronaut with these genes? So that was it. So in about 1984, I'm at Fordham. I'm studying. I begin my studies with Sanford Meisner and at Lee Strasberg. And that's kind of when I went, all right, I'm in this now. Let's see if we can have a go at it.
For folks who may not, the names have to ring a bell, I would think. But for folks who may not be familiar with Meisner and Strasberg, kind of just in a nutshell,
Sanford
who are they?
Sanford Meisner was a legendary acting teacher, along with if you know who Marlon Brando is, you know that Marlon Brando studied with Stella Adler. There were three very, very profound teachers that ultimately came out of what was known as the group theater in the 1930s.
Yeah.
The group theater was founded by Lee Strasberg, Stella Adler, Sanford Meisner, Elia Kazan, who directed On the Waterfront and many, many great films, Streetcar Named Desire, great theater director. This was a group of actors, writers. It was a collective of theater professionals, dramatists, directors, teachers that all came out of this collective of the group theater in the 1930s. And they all kind of peeled off and started their own methods of teaching, all of which were based in the Stanislavski method.
Yeah.
Konstantin Stanislavski wrote the kind of seminal actors book, An Actor Prepares. And they all, at one point, the whole group theater had gone to Russia and studied under Stanislavski at the Moscow Art Theater, came back to the States and kind of splintered off and created their own methods of teaching. Sandy's was one. Lee Strasberg obviously started the Actors Studio, which spawned Pacino, De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, James Dean, Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
And Stella had her own sort of coterie of devoted fans. Probably most notably, the most notable famous student of Stella's would be Mark Ruffalo, who Stella passed away, I believe, in the 80s. But Mark is probably the most well-known exponent of Stella's teaching to this day, besides Marlon Brando. And so, anyway, I studied with Sandy Meisner for 7 years. My mom was in his class in the 1950s with the likes of Steve McQueen, Joanne Woodward, Gregory Peck was there, Robert Duvall, Diane Keaton, and each of these different teachers had their devotees. They had their students that adhered to the teachings of these great teachers. So when I decided to become an actor, my mom said, "Well, you got to study with Sandy." And so I went and interviewed with Mr. Meisner, and I ended up learning from him for about 6-7 years.
Wow.
And
his technique is, because, there's a lot of focus on, different techniques, and there's a bunch of them out there. And a lot of people talk about the moment before, or, certain breathing techniques, or, really, devoting themselves into the character, and they'll do the job for the few months before they actually go and play the part. So they really get into the head. Just a little bit about Meisner's technique, the Meisner technique, and how have you used it a lot?
Basically, his motto is acting is the ability to live truthfully under imaginary circumstances. That's it in a nutshell.
Nice.
Acting is doing, acting is being, acting is reacting. It's very simple when you break it down. When you think about it, it's really the ability to live truthfully under imaginary circumstances is the essence of what we do as actors. Strasberg kind of took it to another level with the method. It was a lot more intellectual, a lot deeper. Obviously, there's that whole sense memory thing. I studied with a sort of a disciple of Lee's, a wonderful actor named Fred Sadoff, who taught a Strasberg class. So, as an actor, when you're 19, 20, 21 years old, you take what works for you and you put it into effect.
Yeah.
So I used a little bit of what I learned from Strasberg, a lot of what I learned from Sandy. To me, it's the most basic. And we do what's called a repetition exercise in class, where I would say, Todd, your sweater is blue. And you'd say, my sweater is blue. And I'd say, your sweater is blue. And you go back and forth, and you would do this repetitively. So you get the essence so you're literally listening. You're literally in the other person's head. You're going back and forth and back and forth. So you're literally, truly listening in the essence of the moment. Wow. Without sounding too dorky and actory, that's basically what it breaks down to. Is Sandy's way of teaching is really about listening and reacting off of your partner in the scene.
Yeah.
And that's what's always worked best for me. The best actors, when you watch the best performances, you watch a Robert Duvall in anything, you can see Robert Duvall listening.
Yeah.
You watch Dustin Hoffman in anything. Now, Dustin studied out here at the Pasadena Playhouse with Gene Hackman. They were roommates out here. So I don't think Dustin was a studio guy. I'm not sure. I don't think he studied Lee Strasberg, but Dustin is one of the great listeners. Gene Hackman is one of the great. You can see them listening. They're fully invested in the scene, fully invested in their scene partner, and you can see them listening. And that's really what it's about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you want to really get those genuine moments, you have to be able to listen and react off of what you're being given and to make that genuine. Oh, that's so great. So you mentioned that you were in DC for a while when you interned at NPR. Did you take any of those experiences? I'm jumping ahead of here a little bit, but did you take any of those experiences working on the Hill to Below the Beltway when you were when you did that?
Yeah, only in the sense that years later when I produced Below the Beltway, I mean, I knew all of those characters inside and out.
About 5 years ago, there was this young intern, very pretty, very, very attractive. She was wearing one of these summer dresses, flimsy, sort of low-cut baby doll dresses, I think they're called. And
aren't you Paul Gibson?
Unfortunately.
I can't believe you're still in this town.
An incident came to light last night that is going to blow the roof off of this town.
We were working. It was a work session, Scott. We were working, and she came in and...
Oh, my boss, he screwed a high school intern once.
Oh, yeah?
And I took notice of it, and she noticed that I noticed, and I offered her a brandy, and she accepted. That was stupid, I know.
Good morning. Welcome to DC Sunday Shootout.
Dredged up an unsubstantiated rumor, and they coerced this lovely, innocent young woman.
So there's absolutely no truth to anything they're about to say.
Liar!
I'm Paul Gibson. 4 weeks ago, I couldn't get arrested in this town. Now, I'm about to take down a U.S. senator.
Yeah, baby! Up top, up top, up top, up top, up top. That is how you do the shootout.
This is my ticket to get back in. All right, I'm gonna go to New York. I'm gonna get this girl online.
I know who it is.
Well, speak.
Who sent it?
Goddamn lobbyist. Name's Paul Gibson. You know him?
Gibson, he's nothing.
Because it's true, because it happened, because it's despicable, and because it can get you into law school.
This job would be so much fun if it wasn't for the damn lobbyists.
We do this right. We're on top of the world.
We were talking about ruining people's lives. One life. Two. Top.
And also at that point, by the time we shot Beltway, I believe in 2007, 2008, somewhere around there. I think it was back then. I don't know. Do you have the dates on Below the Beltway?
I think I saw a release date of 2010. So
maybe
you're by shooting
yeah.
probably.
It wasn't that long ago. 2010. So at that point, I had played 20 or 30 congressmen. I'd played real life congressmen. I'd played Tom DeLay in Casino Jack. I knew these guys inside and out. I knew these characters that worked on the Hill. I knew the suit wearers and the hairdos and all these kind of politico types. So doing Below the Beltway was something that came very natural to me, and it made it a lot more fun to do because I lived in that realm and in that world for so long.
Nice. How was it acting in something that you were also producing? I imagine the energy was probably a little bit different. Was it different for you in your own head, or did you just approach it day at a time, or how was that?
It was the first feature that I'd produced, and so it was really a lot of fun to wear two hats. I'd be doing a scene, and then the director, Dave Francis, who's a dear friend, he would call cut. I'd take my actor hat off, and then I'd jump behind the camera in Video Village, and I watched the other actors do their scene. So I had to. It was a very low budget production. I think we made Below the Beltway for about $250,000. We shot it in 16 days, guerrilla style in Washington D.C. So it was really kind of run and gun filming, and it was a great lesson to jump into something that frenetic and that crazy. To learn. You got so many moving parts.
Yeah.
You got to make your day. You got to get your scenes in the can by a certain amount of time. We shot in locations that we weren't supposed to be in.
I was about to ask.
Sometimes the office that we shot in my character, Senator Grider, we shot in an office on a Sunday afternoon. We had somehow had access to the mayor of DC's office.
Wow.
Shot it on a Sunday when the building was shut down. We shot it, I believe, in August. So it was probably about 90 degrees outside. So we were in this office building that had no air conditioning. So we're all the actors are running around with these little handheld fans, blowing ourselves with fans because we're shooting in a stiflingly hot room. And so we had to make our day and get in and out of that location in a short amount of time. So you learn a lot in a short amount of time, how to make your days and how to get scenes done quickly. Everybody, it was a real team effort. It was a family effort. All of the actors, I put the cast together. Most of them were dear friends of mine: Tate Donovan, Xander Berkeley, Sarah Clark. They're all people that I just called up and said, "Hey, I got this great script. You want to come and work for absolutely no money in Washington?" Some people for 2-3 days. Some people were there for the whole shoot, for the 2.5-3 weeks.
Yeah.
The only trade-off, I said, I'm not going to pay you anything, but you get to stay in a really great hotel. So we put everybody up in a really lovely hotel. And it was an ultra low budget contract, but people loved the material. They loved the script and they loved the story and they loved the fact that they got to work with each other. I wanted to hire Xander Berkeley, who was an old pal, as that lobbyist character.
Yeah.
And Xander said, listen, I know you. He said, have you cast your female lead yet? And I said, actually, no. And he said, well, I'll do your movie if I can bring Sarah with me to Washington and you cast her as the lead. And I was like, that's genius. She's perfect. She's perfect for the character.
Nice.
Done. You're in. So we got a package deal. We got Sarah, we got Xander. It was actually, I also believe it was Tate Donovan's idea as well. Tate had suggested, he said, you really should hire Sarah because then we'll put the whole band back together. And it was a blast.
That's awesome.
It was a blast. You don't always have those experiences on films, but when you all know each other and like each other, all of a sudden, then when the director calls cut, then all the actors are kind of picking up the equipment and you're moving stuff around, and you're doing it as a team effort. So
yeah, all hands on deck for sure.
Great memory.
Yeah, I just, because I had seen that as I was going through, and I was like, I want to watch that, and I did. And it's a fun movie. It's such a
film. Yeah,
it's really great. I can't imagine working guerrilla style, which for folks who don't know, when you see the exterior of a building, you have to get permits and safety things and and there's a lot of red tape to cut through.
When you see Tate Donovan walking by the White House, it's just a quick shot that we grabbed of him walking by the White House. What you don't see is there's security guards all over this is post 9/11. There's security guards all over the fence of that White House. Everywhere. So we literally had the DP with a blanket over his head, with the camera, hiding the camera, shooting Tate. All he's doing is walking by the gates of the White House, looking in and saying, gosh, if only someday. And I remember at one point, and as a producer, I've got eyes in the back of my head, and I see these security guys, and I'm on the walkie-talkie with the director and with a couple of the PAs. I'm like, here they come, guys. We shoot the shot and let's get the F out of here. Because the security guys started walking towards us. You see this guy with a blanket over his head. That doesn't look kosher. So we got the shot and we moved on. We shot a lot of that kind of stuff. And ultimately we got a movie for $250,000 that looks like we made it for $1 million. I
was going to say, when you told me $250,000, I was like,
yeah,
wow, that is awesome.
And it had a great life beyond. We won a bunch of film festivals. We won the Newport Festival. It's had a terrific life. It's still playing. I think right now it's up on Tubi.
Yeah, it's on Tubi
channel. It's on Crackle. So it's had a nice little life, and we're all still very close to this day. Everybody that was involved in that film. So it's nice when you make a film and everybody is involved and it feels like a family.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you talked about sort of preparing for different roles. I got to ask, how did you prepare for Tommy Carroll in Public Enemies? Because
that's great question.
Wow.
That's kind of the movie that changed my life.
What is it exactly you do for a living?
John Dillon robs banks.
That's a serious thing to say to a girl you just met.
I like baseball, movies, good clothes, fast cars, and you. What else you need to know?
Today,
I am declaring United States of America's first war on crime.
Your task will be to get John Dillinger. Are you up to that task, Agent Purvis?
Absolutely, sir. We are pursuing hardened killers.
Play a game, Mr. President. It's called spin the dial. That's your money, mister?
Yes?
We're here for the bank's money, not yours. Put it away.
Hell, the whole country thinks you're a damn hero.
Robbing banks is getting tougher. We're having too good a time today. We ain't thinking about tomorrow. Yeah, well, you ought to.
Johnny!
Put some clothes on, miss.
They're extraditing you.
Where to?
Indiana. Why? I have absolutely nothing I want to do in Indiana.
Johnny, how long does it take you to go through a bank?
About 1 minute, 40 seconds. Flat. Well, here's a man who killed Pretty Boy Quilty.
The only way that you will leave a jail cell is when we take you out to execute you.
Well, we'll see about that.
John Dillinger has given us a second chance to get John Dillinger.
You can be anywhere.
Where are you going?
Anywhere I want. We're too good for them. They ain't tough enough, smart enough, or fast enough. I hit any bank I want anytime. They got to be at every bank, all the time.
Sun goes down, you can stand all alone.
What if we could get out of here all together? Want to take that ride with me?
Yeah, I want to take that ride with you.
All alone, all alone, all alone.
I had been playing a lot of these kind of, as I like to call them, pricks in suits for a long, long time. I mean, I was doing it until the cows came home. I was making a nice, comfortable living, playing the same guy a lot and getting a little bored of it. And I got a call to go in and read for this Michael Mann film. Michael Mann's one of my heroes. Definitely one of my cinema heroes. And I went in and I had gotten the script and the sides for this Tommy Carroll character who was a thug, an ex-boxer, a getaway car driver, criminal, something so far afield than anything I'd ever played before.
Yeah.
And I was nervous about the audition. And I went to the casting director, Bonnie Timmerman, who cast all of Michael Mann's films. She cast Miami Vice, legendary casting director. And I went to her and I said, I love that you're giving me the opportunity to read for this character. I said, can you give me something a little easier? I said, is there an FBI agent? Is there a lawyer? Is there something else? And she literally turned to me and she said, Spencer, I've been following your career for 25 years. I've watched you play variations on the same theme for the longest time. I brought you in for a reason because I saw something more in you. And I think that there's more of an actor inside you. And I want to see what you can do with this character. So she said, why don't you take the material, give it another day, come back tomorrow. And I'd already done a fair amount of research on him. And he's a real life guy. These are real people. So I'd had a fairly good idea. I knew what he looked like. So I'd really come in really prepared. And it was a really special audition because Michael, when you read for Michael, he has a cameraman in the room with you while you're auditioning, and he's following you around with a Steadicam. It's not just, you're not just reading with a casting director. There's literally a guy with a camera that's following you. And when I was done with the scene, and I really felt like I delivered, and Bonnie said, I'm really glad you took the time. She said, Michael has been watching you from Chicago remotely live while you're doing this scene.
Oh, wow.
I had no idea. And when we were done, she said, we'll let you know. And right that moment, the door opens and Michael Mann wasn't in Chicago. He was on the other side of the wall. He'd been watching me from a live feed from this cameraman's camera. And Michael Mann burst in the room. He said, I love it. I'll see you in Chicago. And,
oh, wow.
and that movie that kind of changed my life. Man, right there.
Yeah. Cause that, for folks who don't remember, Johnny Depp, Christian Bale, gangsters in Chicago, like it's an amazing film. I recall seeing
it's a great
it in
film.
the theater.
It's a great film. It's actually, it's aged better over the years, I think too. I I don't know how well received it was when it first came out, but it's actually aged better over time. I think it's a terrific film. I watch it from time to time when it's on. I'm a big fan of the movie. I love everybody in it. And again, we had a month of rehearsal before we even shot a second of film. Steven
awesome.
Dorff, Jason Clark, Christian, Johnny, all of the bank robbers, Stephen Graham, who obviously has gone on to, he played Al Capone in Boardwalk Empire, extraordinary actors. So it was a great kind of boys club to be a part of. And we had we had weapons training. I had driving training, getaway car. We had to learn how to shoot, the BR guns, the Tommy guns.
Yeah.
So it was a heck of a lot of fun, and Michael, his attention to detail is legendary. And so that was working at a higher level on a film that I'd ever been on before, besides Air Force One, which I'd done, 10, 12 years earlier, which was my first big kind of movie, but being on something with Michael, who every actor, every character had a dossier on their real life characters put together by the production office. So we had a wealth of information. We had all of this great detail about our characters already going in, on top of the research that we'd already done ourselves.
Yeah.
So he's a director who loves actors, and he loves to let actors, he trusts that they've come prepared. And then once we get up and running, he lets them rip.
Yeah. If you're looking for folks listening, if you're looking for a really interesting character study, I've talked a lot on the show about bottle episodes where it's just two characters in like one small space.
Yeah.
If you want to see how Michael Mann works with actors and characters, Collateral, Tom Cruise, Jamie Foxx in a taxi cab, and you really get to see the interesting, because again, with limited, how many angles can we get with this taxi cab? And then you talk about the dossiers. They, everybody wanted to know like all these specific details about Cruise's character. We don't get them in the film, but he knows them because of those dossiers. That's so interesting. So talking about, you mentioned Air Force One. There is not a 4th of July that goes by in the Davis household where we don't watch, most likely start the day with Air Force One.
Tonight I come to you with a pledge to change America's policy. Atrocity and terror are not political weapons, and to those who would use them, your day is over.
In a speech tonight in Moscow, the president issued a direct challenge to terrorist nations
But the
around the
question
world.
remains, what are the risks involved in such a bold policy initiative?
They hated your speech, didn't they?
We're afraid we won't have the guts to back it up.
Air Force One, clear for takeoff. Thank you for your hospitality, Moscow.
Air Force One with emergency call. Where's my family?
The president's plane, Air Force One, has been hijacked.
What do they want?
They want General Radek released from prison.
I will execute the hostage every half an hour.
What are our airborne scenarios?
There are no airborne scenarios.
My husband will not negotiate.
His wife, his daughter, I think he'll negotiate.
How the hell did this happen? How the hell did they get Air Force One?
Your national security advisor has been executed. He just bought you another half hour.
Sir, your parachute.
I'm not leaving without my family. You know who I am? I'm the President of the United States.
Jim isn't making this decision as a president. He's making it as a husband and a father.
Go! Let's not forget this president is a Medal of Honor winner. He knows how to fight.
He has no right to take chances with his life.
We cannot give in to their demands. You've got a job to do.
It makes me so proud, Mr. President, that you stuck with us.
You know your father, he has also killed.
You're nothing like my father. We're tracking 6 MiGs. I'm sending in our F-15s to protect you.
She said MiGs? In a war, people die.
The president is up there with a gun to his head.
I'll do anything to save my family. Don't ask me for something I can't give.
You could finish this with one phone call.
it's a great American film. It's a great popcorn movie.
Yeah.
Even though the Cold War is long over, or is it?
Right.
But it really holds up. It's a great action film. Great Harrison Ford performance. What a very cool thing to be a part of.
Yeah. You were elbow to elbow with Glenn Close.
Yeah.
And Dean Stockwell recently departed. Dean Stockwell.
Yeah, he just left us a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
That was incredible. I mean, I was 26, 27. I'd been around for a couple of years before that, but I remember getting that, and I remember thinking, I've been invited to sit at the grown-ups table.
Yeah.
Those
are some heavy hitters.
When you're a little kid and at Thanksgiving and you sit at the card table with the little kids.
Yes.
So I'd been at the Hollywood card table, the kids table for a little while. And then once you get a call from Wolfgang Peterson and he says, I want you to come join my $200 million movie. And I'm on this thing for 6 weeks and I'm sitting next to, like you said, I'm sitting next to Glenn Close and Dean Stockwell. I remember seeing Glenn Close on Broadway in the musical Barnum. Fell madly in love with her then. It was very hard for me to contain my crush. I was trying to be very stoic and very serious on set with her every day. But I was crushing hard on her, and she couldn't have been lovelier.
That's awesome.
I run every couple of years I run into her and I remind her that I'm still I still carry a torch.
That's awesome. That's so great. I imagine, because for folks, before we started rolling, you mentioned there's been a discussion about Air Force One, 2.
Air Force One, 2. I don't know whether it's just baloney, but I ran into Armin Bernstein, who was one of the executive producers of Air Force One, 1995. It's been a long time. I ran into him randomly on the street in Nantucket Island, Massachusetts, over the summer, where I go every summer for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Bumped into him on the street, and he said, "Yeah, we're thinking about putting together Air Force One Part 2."
Nice.
So I'll believe it when I see it. But I said, "Look, man," I said, "I'm available. I'd like to think that my character Thomas Lee, White House aide, as he's either burned out on Washington and he's gone on to greater things, or he's still one of those Beltway Stockholm syndrome people who just can't get out of Washington. And now at some point he's gone from one government agency to another. Maybe he's run for who knows? But
maybe
I started giving Armin lots of potential backstory on where I thought Thomas Lee might have gone.
I think there's a potential for Glenn Close to come back as the president.
Oh yeah.
And have sort of that be, and either you as VP or maybe chief of staff, or
yes,
or yourself as
I'd like to
president.
think that I'd like to think that the character is no longer like a mid-level staffer. He's
right.
Yeah, I'd like to think that he's kind of gone on to bigger and better things. But I love the idea of Glenn as the president. And who would be the villain? Who would be the great adversary? I mean, God, Gary Oldman was so brilliant.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Don't you want to hear Glenn Close say, "Get off my plane"?
Yes. Oh my God, I so do. I mean, there's oh gosh. Well, part of me thinks seeing some of those, it makes me think of stuff like The Expendables, and I'd love to see somebody really menacing, like a Dolph Lundgren, to come in and just, because he's also got the voice and the whole thing, and just a very menacing look. I think that would be fun. That's off the top of my head. I'm sure you've probably got a Rolodex of potential villains.
Maybe Thomas Lee's gone rogue. Maybe
I was gonna say, I
president, and her aide from 95. Maybe
the mole.
Maybe I've taken a dark turn.
Thomas Lee is the mole. He's the inside man. Oh
yeah. The inside man working for the Ruskies. I think we just nailed it. You're going to get a writing credit.
Yes, which is the whole reason. That's all I really wanted. So,
I love it.
With you talked again with, you have a very distinct voice. Very, I could listen to you read anything, honestly.
Oh, thank you.
But, you worked in NPR, which I'm sure you got on the mic at least a little bit there.
Actually, did not. I was
no,
literally,
never got on
I
the
was,
mic?
I was a paper pusher. I was a $12 an hour intern, which is probably a lot of bread back then in 1983, 1984.
Oh, yeah.
But $12 an hour was decent dough for a kid back then. But yeah, I never went near a mic. I spent a lot of time in the room with Susan Stamberg and Jim Edwards and all those people at All Things Considered, but never got behind a mic. That was much later in my. I didn't get into the voiceover stuff until much later on.
Well, that's where I was going, was just, you talked about, also being cast in things, breaking away from your standard fare with Public Enemies. What was it like to do the voiceover stuff for Star Wars, The Old Republic? That's a unique thing on your resume. As I was scrolling through, I came to that and went,
I had no
idea.
I had no idea what a big thing that was going to be. It was literally a job that I auditioned for. I'm a Star Wars fan, but I'm not a super duper fan.
Sure.
I didn't really. I'm a fan of the first three.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily the next three, the Lucas three, the Jar Jar Binks. That era,
it
kind of lost me. So I auditioned for this character of Darth Revan, and I went in and I ended up doing several more and doing the video game, and it was a great gig. But I had no idea. I can't tell you, Todd. At least maybe 5 times a week, I get in the mail. Somebody will send me a Pop Funko doll of my character, or a drawing of my character, or a photograph to sign. And I mean, I had no idea that this character was such a popular character. For me, honestly, I hate to say it, and I don't mean to sound, poo-pooing it, but it was a gig. It was a gig I did 12 years ago, and I forgot about it, and I went on to the next one. And now I've got people sending me stuff to sign, and it's very flattering. It's lovely. It's the same as like President Ryko on The Legend of Korra. Which was a terrific, also a terrific gig. I had no idea what a big deal that show was when I did the job. And I'm recording with wonderful voice artists and actors like David Hyde Pierce and PJ Byrne and John Michael Higgins. And we'd get the call, oh, you're recording another episode. And I'd show up and there'd be marvelous actors there. But I had no idea, again, what a big deal that really was. Just as when I got cast as Simon Tarsus in my first Star Trek episode.
Yeah.
All my life, I wanted to be in Starfleet. I went to the Academy's training program for enlisted personnel. I took training as a medical technician, and I served at several outposts. The day that I was posted to the Enterprise was the happiest day of my life.
Did you ever consider applying to the Academy, going the whole route? Apply to become an officer?
Well, my parents wanted me to. And then I thought about it. I used to sit under this big tree near the parade grounds.
An elm tree with a circular bench?
Yes, that's the one.
I spent many an hour there. It was my favorite spot to study.
I used to sit under that tree and watch the drills. Picture myself an officer. I know that it would have made my mother very happy, but
You didn't do it?
No. I was 18 and eager. The last thing I wanted was to spend 4 years sitting in classrooms. I wanted to be out there, traveling the stars. I didn't want to wait for anything. And now it's done, isn't it? My career in Starfleet is finished.
Not if you aren't guilty, Simon.
Doesn't matter. I lied on my application. And that mistake will be with me for the rest of my life.
Literally had no idea what a big deal Star Trek was. I just didn't. All I knew was my godfather was an actor named Liam Sullivan, and he was on a pretty iconic episode called Plato's Stepchildren.
Yeah.
And I forget his character's name, but he was the kind of the Zeus-like character that sort of ordered Shatner around on the chessboard with Michael Dunn.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know what a big deal. Well, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into when I did Star Trek. It was a hugely popular show at the time. Next Gen was a big deal. When I got it, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And now it's become such a huge part of my life that I'm so grateful for. I'm having dinner with LeVar tomorrow night. I've been directed by Jonathan Frakes maybe 5 or 6 times since then. He's become one of my dearest friends.
He seems like a real sweetheart.
No
LeVar does too.
And I've gone to a couple of conventions in Vegas. That's a lot of fun. The Star Trek fandom is really, really special. It really is.
Yeah,
it's really
very passionate about the fandoms. I would imagine there was a little. I gotta imagine, like, for a character like Darth Revan and Simon Tarsus, getting into the sci-fi realm. Did you notice anything about any of the direction that you were getting, or did you approach it like everything else, of like, this is a character, it just happens to have pointy ears, or it happens to be able to manipulate the Force? I did not know. I mean, with Tarsus, I had no idea what a Romulan was. I didn't know a difference between a Romulan and a Vulcan, or so I literally had to. And there was no internet back then, right?
So this was 1980. 1990. Was there internet back then? If there was,
a very limited
World Wide
amount.
Web.
Yeah.
So I couldn't go on Google and say, "Hey Google, what does a Romulan do? How does a Romulan act?" So I literally was making it up as I go. I went to Jonathan Frakes and I said, and there was a scene with Patrick Stewart in the 10 Forward in his quarters where I broke down crying.
Yeah,
it's not in the show.
Right.
Because we ended up having to reshoot it. I believe Rick Berman, the executive producer of the show, he'd seen the dailies from the show and said, a Romulan would never cry. I was getting very emotional, and it was very sort of borderline, you wouldn't shed a tear. So we had to kind of go back and retweak that. That was just a learning curve. Yeah. And I was also, to be honest with you, I was very nervous. I mean, all the nerves that you see in Simon Tarsus when I'm in those scenes with Patrick Stewart. I grew up watching Patrick Stewart there was a wonderful PBS show called Acting Shakespeare with John Barton. And it was on PBS in the late 60s, early 70s, I believe. And it was members of the Royal Shakespeare Company, like Patrick Stewart, like Helen Mirren, and they would act scenes of Shakespeare for students. It was a PBS television show. So he was iconic to me already. And I just got a chill talking about it, to be honest with you. And then sitting across from Sir Patrick Stewart as a young actor, playing a character that I hadn't had the opportunity to do a lot of research on. So I was really just kind of winging it. And it was being shaped by my conversations with Patrick, my conversations with Frakes, my conversations with LeVar and Brent Spiner and Michael Dorn and the people that I was working on. I was running right in the makeup trailer. I was like, what would a Romulan do in this situation? Yeah. And I was kind of getting little bits of information and trying to form that character based on the information that I'd gotten from the other actors who were already so dug into their roles, right, and so wonderful. Gates and everybody on that show was just so terrific. Yeah. And they were so terrific to me and so welcoming to me. And I was literally terrified. So when you see Simon kind of shaking and nervous on that scene on the witness stand in the courtroom, I mean, I was nervous.
Yeah.
I see that episode replay sometimes if I'm flipping around, and I'll see it late at night. That's one of those things where you go back and you say, gosh, if I could go back in a time machine and retweak that performance and recalibrate it, I would. There are not many performances.
Oh,
I think so. I mean, if I the actor that I am now,
if I
with the experience that I have now, I'd love to go back in time and give a better performance.
Mm.
I think it's okay. It's a very raw performance. You see a very green actor up there. I would have given him much more. I would have given him more layers and more nuance. But I mean, again, I was a 25-year-old kid.
Yeah. Well, I in looking at it, it's because it comes across, we talked earlier about those genuine moments.
Though, but talking about, the character in Flesh and Blood in Voyager, Weiss, that was 10 years later. So at that point, I had the opportunity. I think 10 years. I think then you had the internet, and I'd seen every episode of TNG, nice. And so I was a better prepared actor. And nice. And I'm trying to remember who. I think Ken Biller directed one of those episodes. Kenny was a great friend, and he directed one of those 2 episodes. And I had a lot of guidance, but I also I'd come into that situation as a much better prepared actor 10 years later, 8 or 10 years later, whenever that was when we did Voyager. So
you've definitely got, because I know you feel that way about your performance in Drumhead, but I think it's such an amazing, genuine performance of this. He's a kid, and he's scared.
It's very pure.
Yeah.
Wait, I got to show you something. You'll get a kick out of this. Your listeners can't see it, but this is something I'm very proud of. So I did something right, obviously.
Yes. Oh, that's so great.
Isn't that wild? I got my own Simon Tarsus action figure.
That is so cool. Oh God, that's so awesome.
obviously, whatever I did, people seem to dig. So that makes me happy.
Well, here's fingers crossed that you make another appearance now that we've got a whole bunch more Star Trek coming up, that maybe you'll be an admiral or, something else coming up.
We've got Picard. We've got,
yep.
Yeah, believe me, I've already put in the call. I've already put in the call to Frakes. I'm having dinner with LeVar Burton tomorrow night, who's been directing a lot of Picard.
Yeah.
I've been throwing my hat in the ring to bring Tarsus back for sure.
That's awesome. That's so great.
Shameless actors, believe me. So.
It's not unlike comedians. I've been in the room with enough comedians that it's like, hey, you got some work? Is there a show? Yeah. Can I do anything?
What we do.
Yeah. Well, just a couple more things. We're getting close to the end of our hour here. I wanted to hit. I mentioned comedy here. You worked with some comedy juggernauts on News Radio. You did an episode of News Radio, and I gotta say, how crazy is Joe Rogan?
You know what? I didn't really. I don't think I had much to do with Joe. No. Most of my stuff. This was. Unfortunately, this was after Phil Hartman had passed.
Yeah.
John Lovitz kind of reluctantly stepped into Phil's shoes.
Right.
And the set was there was a weird vibe on the set. I remember we were waiting for this is my biggest memory of News Radio. I don't even know if I actually even met Joe Rogan. Maybe even at the table read. But I think the scene was with Maura and Dave Foley and Lovitz. I think I played an FBI agent.
Yeah.
It's funny. Somebody reached out to me. There's a guy that does a podcast about News Radio, and he got my information, found me, and said, "I want to do an hour with you about your experience on News Radio." I'm like, dude, I've done 275 television shows. It's a blip in my memory. But what I do remember is that we were all sitting around the soundstage waiting for Andy Dick to show up. There was an enormous crash. He was late. There was a crash. We all ran outside the soundstage, and he had crashed his Porsche into the side of the soundstage, like crumpled his Porsche into the side of the soundstage. That's my memory of News Radio, and having a lovely time and getting to work with. I love Maura. Lovitz and I have been friends ever since then, and it was a great time. But unfortunately I didn't get to work with Phil, but I did get to work with John. I got to work with Dave Foley. I was a big Kids in the Hall fan.
Well, see, I'm the youngest of 3 boys. My next oldest brother's 13 years older than me.
Oh wow.
So by the time he was in the demographic for David Letterman, Saturday Night Live, Kids in the Hall, his 4-year-old little brother was sitting next to him. So I absorbed all of that as a kid, which influenced my comedy moving forward. But you mentioned you're having dinner with LeVar and you put in calls to Frakes.
Well, LeVar's he's one of the Cads.
He's one of the Cads.
So we're all the Cads are getting together tomorrow night.
My big question about the Cads is how safe do you feel when Alfred Molina gives you a hug? Because I imagine the answer is very.
He is genuinely, I can say without reservation, Alfred Molina, who is to me a huge movie star. He is fully and completely, without any pretense, the loveliest, nicest man actor I know. I just adore him. He doesn't have an ounce of guile or an ounce of menace in him. He's an incredible artist. I studied with him in his Shakespeare intensive. We did a production of The Lion in Winter together many years ago. He's one of my acting heroes, and the fact that I get to call him a friend I still pinch myself. So he's Alfred and I started this thing called the CADS, the Character Actors Dining Society.
Yes.
Where we meet once a month at a kind of an old school LA joint, a restaurant here in town. There's a place called Musso and Frank's here in Hollywood. It's the oldest restaurant in LA. Another place called Dan Tana's, real old school Hollywood restaurant. So it's me. Eventually, it's sort of mushroomed into a group of about 12 of us. But I off the top of my head, LeVar, Kevin Pollak, Jason Alexander, Richard Kind, Titus Welliver, Emilio Estevez, Stephen Weber, Eric McCormick, Michael McKeon, Paul McCrane, and the honorary chick in our group is Diane Keaton, my crush, who
another crush.
We were all having dinner one night and Diane Keaton was walking by our table and she did a double take and she said, "Can I take my picture with you guys?" Oh, and Fishburne and Lawrence Fishburne.
Oh yeah.
Lawrence is one of the original. He's one of the OG Cads.
Man, that's awesome.
But it's a really terrific group of guys, and I just sit back and marvel and listen to Michael McKeon is just a fountain of show business history and music history. He's just one of the smartest, most knowledgeable, loveliest men I know. I didn't know him before. He was brought into the group by Kevin Pollak, who I also didn't know. A couple of these guys were brought on by Jason Alexander, who I have known for a long time. So it's a great group of guys, and we sit around for 2 hours and we drink wine and eat steak and shoot the and tell stories and tell lies and bust each other's chops and it's also a great support group. We were all supposed to have dinner tomorrow night at a restaurant at one of our favorite restaurants, and because of COVID we pulled the plug on that. So Paul McCrane, who you might know from ER and Fame, a million things. Paul is a new member. So he's cooking gumbo for all of us, and we're going to sit out in his backyard, spread out with our masks on, so we can still have that experience of being together. But it's a really lovely group of guys, and even when the pandemic hit, we were doing it over Zoom. We were in each other's homes, and we were having dinner in front of our computers with each other as CADS, as Character Actors Dining Society. But it's a great group. So LeVar is joining us tomorrow night. We haven't seen him for a while. Alfred Molina has been in Montreal on a project for a while, so he's coming back. So we're going to have about 12 of us tomorrow night, which will be great.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, you mentioned these lovely ladies in your life, Glenn Close and Diane there with the CADS. Another lovely lady who's popped into your life on a couple of occasions is Taylor Swift. How has this happened? And what?
She just won't leave me alone. She just won't. She's got to stop following me. It's driving me crazy. I got to change my number. I've changed the locks, my email address. No, I met Taylor Swift probably 6 years ago at a New Year's Eve party after the ball had dropped. She had done the ball drop thing with Ryan Seacrest on New Year's Eve, and there was an after party. I was with my girlfriend at the time, and we were together in this restaurant, and Seacrest, who I've known for a long time, came up and he said, "Do you want to meet Taylor? And I said, yeah, sure. And Dana, my girlfriend, we went over and she's like vibrating. She's a huge Taylor Swift fan. I honestly, at that point in my life, I don't know that I could have told you the name of one Taylor Swift song. That I know them all now, and I'm a massive fan of hers now. Nice. But I went up and she came up to me and she said, I know you. And I said, no, we've never met. And she said, no, you play District Attorney Stephen Olson on Law and Order. And you did the episode where you played the guy that represented the character that did the thing and the mafia. And I was like, yeah. And then she said, and then you did another episode where you played the same guy and you represented this other. And I said, how do you know this? And she said, well, I have a really boring life. I do my job and then I go back to my hotel room and I watch reruns of Law and Order. And I said, God, that's so sad. Yeah. And what a sad little existence you must lead. I said, forgive me. I said, what is it that you do? And she looked at me. She said, well, my name is Taylor. I'm a singer. I said, I know who you are. I was busting her chops. But it was fine. I said, and what is it you do again? And that's she kind of looked at me like kind of happy that he doesn't know who I am. And I was just sort of delighting and busting her chops. And I've run into her a bunch of times since. And every time she sees me, if we're at a party or event or something, and she's like, what's your name again?
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. So she's a really good egg.
Nice.
She's a really good egg and just stupidly talented. I mean,
beyond.
Yeah. So
there's a reason for the level of fame and success. She's very talented.
But I did have to block her number. So.
Well, we're coming to the end here. Would you like to do the lightning round? You ready?
Let's do the lightning round.
All right.
The lightning round.
All right, folks, here we go. This is for all the cash and prizes. Here we go. And we start now. Which was the more comfortable uniform, Star Trek The Next Generation or Star Trek Voyager?
Exact same outfit, exact same polyester spandex outfit. Probably Next Gen, because I remember in Voyager, I had to come up out of the water and I was in a freezing cold lake and I had to pop up over and over and over again out of this lake, frozen and covered in like mossy slime. So let's go with Next Gen.
All right. Does Jeff Goldblum smell like rich mahogany or fresh cut grass?
Both. Both.
Do you snore?
I do snore, sadly. Yeah. I could shake a house, apparently.
Did Quentin Tarantino make any noises when he tried to touch your feet?
Yeah, but I can't. I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you. Tarantino style, with a blowtorch.
So you'd kill me first, and then we have this interview.
Exactly.
Do you own any suits that make you look anything less than a BAMF?
No.
Okay.
No.
If Lord Voldemort offered you an Alfred Molina level hug, would you accept it?
Is that Ralph Fiennes?
Yes. Yeah.
He scares me. I've only seen a couple of those films, but he's terrifying. I would get hugged by Alfred Molina anytime. But getting hugged by Lord Voldemort might freak me out a little bit. But I'd let Doc Ock hug me, because I know that underneath Doc Ock is Alfred Molina, who's the nicest guy in the world. So
of course.
There you go.
Will you tell Steven Weber to follow me back on Instagram?
Sure.
What is the name of the character you played in the 1989 made-for-television movie Shannon's Deal?
Oh my God! Give me a clue. Give me a first letter.
You need this answer, Spencer, or you lose the game.
What is shit? I don't know what to tell you.
That is correct. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Is it in IMDb? Does he have a character?
Honestly, I looked everywhere. I couldn't find it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, IMDb didn't have it. Wikipedia didn't have it. I was like, you know what? That's going to be our final question. And when he says,
"No kidding,"
I'll tell him he's correct.
I am correct. I remember. I mean, it was Jamie Sheridan, and I remember that was maybe one of the first 5 shows that I ended up getting. That might be one of my first TV credits.
I think it's listed as your second credit. So I was like, boy.
But there's no character name?
There's no character name.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
I looked around for it.
I'll make one up and put it on IMDb.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'll call him Simon Tarsus. That'll freak people out.
Oh, that will freak people out.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I am so good at lightning rounds.
Oh, well, any parting words of wisdom or final thoughts, or how did you feel? How did I do?
You did great. You're terrific. You are the best yet. I got to tell you.
Oh,
it was really a joy talking to you, and I could go for another hour. I love talking to you. So let's do this another time.
Absolutely. You have an open invitation to come on the show anytime.
Thank you, brother. You crushed it. And I do tend to ramble, so apologies if I went on a bit.
No, this is wonderful.
But I loved it. I love to tell these stories, and especially talking to someone as nice as you. So it was really a pleasure.
Oh, thanks so much. Well, Spencer, you've got a whole bunch of projects going on. Let's plug as many of them as you want to.
I mean, the one that I'm most excited about is called Winning Time on HBO, coming in March. It's about when Magic Johnson came to the Lakers in 1979 from Michigan State and changed the game of basketball. And Jerry Buss bought the team and transformed the NBA, transformed the league. And it's about the great rivalry between the Lakers and the Celtics, and Magic's and the evolution of the Showtime Lakers.
There's two things in this world that make me believe in God. It's sex and basketball. You know?
I'm sleeping.
Her loss. I'm about to buy a team. I want to build something special. A real dynasty. But I need a partner.
First pick, 1979 NBA draft. The Los Angeles Lakers select Earvin Magic Johnson.
With me, it's gonna be exciting.
Magic motherfucking Johnson.
Style. Pizzazz. I don't know why basketball can't feel like that.
To me, Dr. Buss,
It's showtime!
it do.
It's got John C. Reilly as Jerry Buss. It's got Adrian Brody as Pat Riley, Sally Field, Jason Segel. Just incredible cast. We have 2 Pulitzer Prize winning playwrights. We've got Tracy Letts from Ford Ferrari, who won the Pulitzer for August Osage County. And we have Stephen Adley Girgis, founding member of the Labyrinth Theater Company in New York, with Philip Seymour Hoffman playing a big role. Gosh, who else? The wonderful actor playing Magic Johnson, Quincy Isaiah, newcomer, who's just incredible. It's from Adam McKay of Talladega Nights and Ron Burgundy and Succession, and his great movie Don't Look Up that's out right now. Incredible thing to be a part of. I play Chick Hearn, the voice of the Lakers, the broadcaster for 50 years for the Lakers.
Perfect.
And we just finished our first season, 10 episodes coming at you in March, Winning Time. And I'm on the socials. I'm on Twitter at #1 Spencer Garrett, and on Instagram Spencer Garrett #1.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I am at Mr. Todd A. Davis on all of the socials. My show, Computer Resume Podcast, where we cover the entire Star Trek franchise in chronological order, is available wherever you get your podcasts, and on all the socials at Computer Resume. Please like, rate, review, and share this episode and every episode of Cinema Shock with all your family, friends, and fellow cinephiles. You can reach us at cinema_shock on all of the socials, and find all our links for episodes and merch on cinemashock.net. And until next time, Johnny has the keys.